After one clunker of a performance in Pittsburgh, it is clear the Cincinnati Reds have hit the August wall, so what comes next is super important.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Reds. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Stephen Offenbaker. His name is Jeff Carr. We are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans. We are lifelong baseball fans. We have been talking about the Cincinnati Reds in podcast form for a combined 14 years. We love talking baseball. We love talking Cincinnati Reds baseball, and we love talking about those things with you. On today's show, it's time for a 3-game win streak. There's no way around it. We're going to talk about what the Reds need to do for the rest of this Pittsburgh series a little bit later on in the show. In a few minutes, we're going to talk about Chase Burns' new challenge. We're going to finally get to see him back on the mound after the Bristol debacle. We're going to talk about what to expect from Chase Burns here in just a few minutes. But where we're going to begin is with that August wall that Jeff just talked about. The Reds seemingly have run into it a little bit. We're going to talk about exactly what that means on today's show. All right, Jeff, let's dive into this because you look at what the Reds are doing right now, and they still do exactly what we ask of them, just as frustrating as possible. I said at the beginning of this little stretch of games that the Reds needed to go 5-2. They're still on track for that. That could still be a thing. So, but here we are. They lose to Pittsburgh in an ugly game. And I just want to tell you right now that I'm okay with it. Because if you're going to have one ugly game against the Pirates, why not go ahead and make it the game that Paul Skeens is on the mound?
Right. And to be honest with you, Steve, that was one of those games that, it's a defeatist attitude. I'm sure somebody's going to say that, but you just kind of chalk it up to you're not really sure you're going to beat Paul Skeens. And it wasn't necessarily Paul Skeens that beat them, albeit the Reds did have plenty of hits and they stranded plenty of runners, but it was Brady Singer that beat the Cincinnati Reds because he couldn't keep the ball in the strike zone. I mean, his very first run that he allows is a solo shot to Brian Reynolds. And I get it. Brian Reynolds is having a horrible season, but when he plays the Reds, everything seems to feel right for him. I don't know why that is, but he clocks the solo homer, Oppo Taco, and all of a sudden, Brady Singer, like everything hits him at once. And he's just like, I just gave up a run. I'm facing Paul Skeens. What do I do? And then he walks the next 3 guys. And at that point, we lost Brady Singer. And I wanted to see if he could come back from it, but it's clear he has those moments and starts that when they go south and when he just continues to dig the hole, he's not getting himself back out. And so the pitching was just done from that point on. And that's a very frustrating thing to see. But the overall feeling of that game fed this thought that I've had in my head for a couple of days now, and that is the Cincinnati Reds in August during this regime of young talent, right? With Ellie and Matt McClain and Spencer Steer and Tyler Stevenson, all these guys. During the era of Ellie, let's call it that, 2023, 2024, they have been horrible in August. 2023, they went 10-17 in August. It sunk them. That's the reason they missed the playoffs. And then in 2024, May sunk them. They were horrible in May. They were 9-18. That really put them behind the 8 ball. But then they didn't help themselves in August when they went 12-17. So yeah, they improved a little bit, but they still lost 17 ball games. And it all stems from a game early on in each season in the month of August that they just got their clocks clean. It happened on August 1st in 2023 when they lost 20-9 to the Cubs. And then in 2024, they had that really annoying game at the beginning of August against the Giants where it just felt like they could never really get anything going. And then Blake Snell just really shut them down. I really kind of feel like those types of games set up this barrier, as it were, that now the Reds must push through, which is why we will talk about later on where they really can't lose these next 3 games because they have got to break down this wall that August seems to present to them every year.
Yeah, the next 3 games are really important for a lot of reasons, but reason number 1 is if you look past the next 3 games, Boy, this schedule, Jeff. 3 against the Phillies, 3 against the Brewers, 3 against the Angels, 3 against the Diamondbacks. Those are the next games you should win on paper. Then 3 against the Dodgers, 3 against the Cardinals. This is not an easy schedule for August. We talk about them winning series. You got to win series where you can. They need to win the next 3. Battle in the Phillies and the Brewers, and to some extent the Angels. Beat the Diamondbacks, and then you're right back to a battle with the Dodgers and the Cardinals. So for me, it's absolutely a time where you have to take advantage of the opportunities you have. They, on paper, should beat the Pittsburgh Pirates. They, in reality, should beat the Pittsburgh Pirates. They, for the sake of making the wild card and staying relevant, need to beat the Pittsburgh Pirates. It's just one of those things that needs to happen. And this really, it's ridiculous, Jeff. It's August. There's a lot of games left, but nonetheless, these are must-win games. They have to go out and win the next 3 games and take this series. A split is unacceptable. A loss of this series is unacceptable.
There's something that concerns me a little bit, and it's interesting because there were a couple of things that really stuck out from the loss last night that, would really kind of, get stuck in your craw, as it were. But the thing that really concerns me a bit is the conservativeness on the base paths. This team is fast, and I get it. They ran themselves into a lot of outs last year, but for as many outs as they ran themselves into more runs. Like, looking back at last season, according to the metric of base running runs, the Reds were the best team. This year, they're still in the top 10, but they're like 8th. And a lot of that just has to do with the fact that they are being more conservative on the base paths. And I kind of felt like that bit them in the butt yesterday because they got guys on base and they just stood there. And that's all that they did. There was no run and hit. There was no stolen base attempts. There was nothing like that to put more pressure on Paul Skeens. I don't even know that Paul Skeens attempted a pickoff move.
The thing with Paul Skeens, and maybe the Reds were operating like the rest of us yesterday, Jeff, and just that, it's Paul Skeens. Why bother? We're just gonna acquiesce. We're just going to just surrender for this game and just move on to the next 3. You're not wrong about the running. You and I have talked about, is it an overcompensation? Because this is one of the things that Tito talked about when they hired him. We're going to do things the right way. We're going to play baseball the way it's supposed to be played. We're going to rein in. Ellie's still going to run, but he's going to be smarter about it. Basically all these things, right? I think an overcorrection may have happened, because you're right. There are times this year where I'm like, why have they not run? Why are they still standing on first base? What are they doing? Because some of these guys are fast enough to go out there and manufacture things, go out there and make things happen. All you need is to press the catcher, force a throw in the center field, force some kind of a mistake to happen, and now you're moving right along. So I don't think you're wrong. I think they overcorrected, and they need to bring it back to the middle a little bit and let these guys run. I continue to wonder about Ellie's legs, because we know he had the leg thing going on there early in the season, but he's never gone back to just going. And you want to say that that's part of this rein it in that Tito has brought in, right? You want to say that that's a result of Tito saying, I'll let you know when to go. But you would think and expect at this point that Ellie's legs would be okay and that he would be running more.
I would say that he is being judicious, because looking at individual players, he still leads the major leagues in base running runs. But the thing that is intriguing to me team-wide is the fact that the Brewers, who are unquestionably the best team in baseball right now, have more attempts at stolen bases. They have 30 more attempts at stolen bases than the Reds do. They also have another 30 more attempts at trying to advance for that extra base. And this is kind of a metric that Baseball Savant uses to say, okay, when it makes sense versus when it seems a little bit aggressive. The Brewers are super aggressive versus the Reds. And the Brewers are the number 1 base running team in baseball right now. And so it's translated into them being the number 1 team in baseball. And I kind of wonder a little bit about how this conservative base running mentality has affected them. And I noticed it a lot. And kind of like you mentioned, I kind of think there was a little bit of all that the Reds approached this game against Paul Skeens, and we can talk about the merits or the disadvantages of that. But really, when it comes down to it, I wonder if they themselves are just hitting this wall. And I really hope that they can push through it because it's super important. Like if they go 10-17 or even 12-17 in this month, you can really count them out of the playoff race because everything is so close right now. And there's a series coming in September of 6 games where they play the Mets and the Padres. And if they're within striking distance of the before that 6 games happen, man, we could be cooking with gas. But like you mentioned, the struggle is real after this Pirates series, and they really got to get going. And the guy who's going to do it is Chase Burns. He's at least get it started. He's got a new challenge that he's facing, though, tonight, and we'll talk about what that is coming up next. The best way to get down to the ballpark or get down to the football stadium with football heating up too is with GameTime. Steve and I use GameTime just about every time we go down to the ballpark because they've got great last-minute deals on tickets everywhere in the stadium. Sometimes you can find some really good deals. Maybe the weather's not so great, but for whatever reason you're down by the stadium, you're going to find some really good zone deals on some seats you may not necessarily buy tickets for in advance because GameTime's got amazing deals. Plus, you can see the view from your seat if you're going on the road with the Reds or if you're going to a brand new ballpark or a brand new stadium, and you can see exactly what your view looks like. GameTime makes sure that you know everything about your tickets before you hit the purchase button because they take the guesswork out of buying tickets. That's over on GameTime, and when you download the app today, use the promo code LOCKDOWNMLB, and you'll save $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. That's over on the GameTime app today. They got the last-minute deals at the lowest prices, guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On Reds part of your everyday routine. If you're an everydayer, we really appreciate you. And if you're not an everydayer, click that subscribe button and become an everydayer here on the YouTube and on your favorite podcasting app. All right, Steve, there is a very interesting challenge coming ahead of Chase Burns here tonight because we've mentioned the way that his career has started. Like, throw the toughest challenges you could possibly think of at a guy and line them all up, and that's what Chase Burns has faced. And now he gets to go to Pittsburgh and face the Pittsburgh Pirates at a point where the Reds kind of need a win and really need a win. And so not only does he sort of have to be a stopper in regards to, like, you know, where the Reds are in the season, but he's also going to have to, wow, I just lost the word. He's going to have to manufacture his own momentum in this game.
Yeah, it's about adrenaline, right? It's about him going out there and being ready to do what he does without having some type of a fall off. I don't think we got to worry about that. I think he's young enough still that the opponent's not going to matter as much. The adrenaline's going to be there. Coming off of that Bristol start, he should be rested. He should be fresh. I'm kind of looking forward to how he pitches tonight. This should be I don't want to call it a breakout game. That's really not right. But this should be one of those starts that we're talking about for a while, at least if you look at it on paper. When we talk about this start tomorrow, it should be a conversation of, wow, Chase Burns strikes out 10 and does, all of these things. That should be the conversation. I think that he has it in him. I think that what we've seen from him thus far says to me he's going to go out there and be just fine. But you're right. It's a little bit different of a situation because he really has to go out and just kind of meet those expectations, because when you look at it on paper, there is no good reason why he shouldn't dominate this lineup. Yeah,
it's easy to look down at the home plate and you see Shohei Ohtani or you see Aaron Judge or something like that, and man, your adrenaline's pumping. You're like, I got to get this guy out. I got to throw some good pitches. Or you're standing on the mound and you're looking around, and this is some kind of big speedway thing. There's like 90,000 people here. Holy crap, I'm fired up to do this. Now you're in Pittsburgh. And if you saw the crowd last night, that was the Pittsburgh Paul Skeens crowd. They get a bump whenever Paul Skeens pitches. There's going to be less people there tonight because Pittsburgh is bad. Although for whatever reason, they seem to kill the Reds in Pittsburgh. I saw those statistics flying around yesterday where I think it is they've lost like a ridiculous amount of games in Pittsburgh, and the Pirates have not been good either. So that's kind of the thing that I'm worried about a little bit, is that on paper, he is favored. And when it comes to this game, the adrenaline's not going to be flowing unless, like, like you said, like there is that youthful energy that he's like, man, I'm still going, man. I'm buzzing. This is my first year. I'm just buzzing. But what I worry about isn't necessarily the first pitch. What I worry about is the first pitch after he gives up a hit or the first pitch after he gives up a run, because I'm not going to sit here and say I expect him to pitch a shutout. I think what's going to happen is he is going to cruise. And then Andrew McCutchen is going to give him like a 9-pitch at bat, because McCutchen does that where he fouls off, all the pitches. And whether or not he gets him out, what happens after that is going to be so important, because we saw Brady Singer giving up meatball pitches to guys batting $160. And these guys just lacing them into the outfield. They felt right again. They understood why they were professional hitters again. Chase Burns can't do that. He cannot be that guy to help them continue to build their confidence. He needs to shut them down. And that is the thing that I worry about the most, because this is going to be the first start that he is pitching in that you're like, he should shove.
He should, and there's things he's got to do, and it's the same things we've been talking about with him every time he comes out. This is going to be his 8th start, Jeff. He still walks too many guys right now. His walks per 9 is 3.8. He's got to keep that under control. He cannot walk people. He cannot give free passes in this game. It's going to come back to haunt him. Now, you look at that number, that's really only his bad number right now. And before anybody comes at me, his ERA is 6.04. I don't care. His FIP is 2.9. He has been very, very unlucky on the mound. You look at his other numbers, strikeouts per 9, Jeff, 14.9. 14. I'm going to say it again, 14.9 strikeouts per 9 innings. He is getting it done, folks. I like this game for him. This, for a young pitcher that has had his ups and downs, coming off of that train wreck where the adrenaline must have been just flowing out of him in Bristol, and then to only get to pitch just the beginning of that game, he's got to be chomping at the bit to go. Here's what he's going to do. He's going to strike out 10 guys. He's going to strike out 10 guys tonight. He's going to have that game. He is going to shove. Because
his streak was broken because Bristol only got to pitch 1 inning. Like, right. That'd be great.
He's going to do it. I think he's going to do it. I just don't see this Pittsburgh lineup being able to rattle him in the way that you're describing being worried about. I get why. I get it. It's not going to happen. 10 strikeouts. The Reds are going to dominate the Pittsburgh Pirates tonight.
I'm looking forward to that, because they're also facing Mitch Keller. So the bats have got to go. And Mitch Keller is a pretty good pitcher. He's going to be a guy that can shut them down. But I think that they've got a shot more so against Keller than they did against Skeens to put some runs on the board. And Chase Burns is that guy that if he is going, like you say he will, then they're going to be okay just scoring 3 or 4 runs. They're going to be fine. And the bullpen's super rested, because Tito did a good thing by not pitching any of the A squad or even Graham Ashcraft on the B+ side last night in the debacle that was that game. And I think that was probably a little bit more to your point of, you know what, it's Skeens. And if we lose to Skeens, that's what we were supposed to do anyway. Let's go win these next 3 ball games. And I think that's kind of how they're going to approach it. But Chase Burns is going to be that guy that gets everything going, Steve. Looking at one of these numbers, because I love looking at Baseball Savant, the red and the blue and all the percentiles and all this other stuff. According to strikeout percentage, if he were qualified, he's not, he hasn't pitched enough to be qualified, but if he were qualified, he would be the number 1 pitcher in strikeout percentage. Nobody else has as high a strikeout percentage as he has. He struck out 36% of the batters. We said the 14.9 K per 9, but imagine this. If they're stepping into the box a greater rate than 1 for every 3 batters that he faces, he's striking that guy out. So at least 1 per inning, and definitely more so than that. I'm so impressed by what we've seen so far, and I don't want him to kind of fall back on that and be like, man, I dominated the Dodgers lineup. I'm just going to roll in here, and I'm just going to do my thing, and I'm going to end up killing the Pirates. He's got to be focused. He's got to be on this.
I really, I think I'm really less concerned about this than you are. I really feel like that, he's going to bring that youth, I got to prove myself mentality to whatever game. Right.
I want you
to whatever game he's starting. No, and I know you do. I'm not worried about him having some kind of it's just the Pirates letdown moment. I think he's going to go out there and attempt to dominate. I think he can look at this and see it the same way that I'm seeing it right now. Is this is an opportunity for him to kind of put a little exclamation point at the end of his name for this start and be like, oh my God, have all of baseball talking about this start that Chase Burns had against those Pittsburgh Pirates. I don't see him letting down. I don't see him taking his foot off the gas. I really think he's going to use this opportunity to turn the corner. I think he's going to use this opportunity to start a new win streak for the Reds. I think he's going to use this opportunity to, right the ship after a 2-game losing streak. There's a lot of reasons why he's going to go out there hyped up to pitch. I think he's going to do it. I think he's going to dominate. I look forward to him beating the Buccos for sure. And on that note, they do need to start a new winning streak, Jeff. It's time for them to write this thing. We've talked about the wall. We've talked about Chase Burns going and helping to write it. We're going to talk here in just a minute about this upcoming schedule, why they need a 3-game win streak right now, and what they have to do moving forward. We've got all that for you coming up next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up and college football isn't far behind. It's the perfect time to lock in your season-long, more or less, picks for the 2025 football season, all before week 1 kicks off. Whether you've got your eye on big-name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, PrizePicks makes it easy to get in the game. PrizePicks is easy to use. You can jump onto their app. I have been able to make my picks more or less and all the while be getting ready for the game, grabbing my snacks, pouring myself a beverage, and it's all done before I'm able to flop down in my recliner. It's just that easy to use. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineup after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right. You're going to get $50 for your lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, run your game. If you can't watch us here on YouTube, make sure you are subscribed in the audio feeds. We're seriously on every single podcasting app that's out there. If you happen to find one we're not on and you need us to be on it, let Jeff know. He can make it happen for you. You're going to get Jeff and I Monday through Friday on Locked On Reds. Tim Daniels after each and every Reds game on the Reds postcast, plus whatever special stuff we drop in along the way. All right, Jeff, we've continued to circle around this theme, and this theme is the Reds have to win the next 3 games. It's August. It's the Pittsburgh Pirates. It feels a little silly to be like this is must-win baseball, but it's must-win baseball because you have to look at the rest of the season in its totality. You have to look at the big picture, zoom out a little bit, and understand that August and September doesn't get any better. Really, you look at these 2 months, there are some hard stretches of the schedule. I mentioned it earlier. They got the Pirates, but then the Phillies, the Brewers, the Angels, the D-backs, the Dodgers, the Cardinals. That's the rest of this month. Only the D-backs. You look at that schedule, those 3 games against Arizona are the only games left on the schedule in August after this Pittsburgh series that you're like, oh yeah, the Reds should totally dominate that. And we can't even give the spiel of, okay, they just got to get through that. They get into August or they get into September, they survive August, and then they're cooking with gas. Because no, then they play the Blue Jays, they play the Mets, they play the Padres. You get the Athletics, the Cardinals, the Cubs, the Pirates, and you finish with the Brewers in that month. It's not an easy 2-month schedule. We talked about this at the All-Star break. They have one of the hardest schedules in baseball for the second half after the All-Star break. We think that's a good thing because they play to the level of their opponents, but that is a hard stretch of baseball.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm actually kind of glad of that because I feel like even in years past, like especially in 2023, when we had circled, we were talking about the August wall from that season. We had circled a point in that schedule where, all right, as long as the Reds get through where they're at right now, they got a nice, easy portion here. And they coasted through the easy portion, and they lost games in that. There is no point in this schedule where they should be allowing themselves to coast, much less can they coast because of the competition that they face. But I also say this for a couple of different reasons, because I see that 6-game stretch that you mentioned there in September where, and really it's a 9-game stretch, although the Blue Jays are not anybody that they're trying to catch, but you got to play well against that Blue Jays team this year because they are good. But the 6 games against the Mets and the Padres right now, Steve, after the loss last night, they're 3.5 games back of the Mets. They're 4.5 games back of the Padres. if they can maintain where they are, and ideally they get closer between now and the beginning of September. I mean, that's a month from now. Ideally, they get closer in the next month. But if they do not fall back any further, then they can make some hay and be in the wild card spot by the end of that stretch if they play well. And so that is why we are looking at these next 3 games and saying, you got to have them, because you do not find yourself a better opportunity to maintain or improve your standing than when you're facing these Pittsburgh Pirates and you don't have Paul Skeens on the mound facing you.
Yeah, if they're four games or less behind those teams heading into that stretch of 6 games in September, that's playoff baseball pretty much. I mean, that's the season. Those 6 games are playoffs. Is really how that. Yeah, I'm talking about.
I think that's how we're going to align ourselves.
That's how it's going to.
That's the.
That's how it's going to go. Because then after that, if the Athletics, the Cardinals, the Cubs, the Pirates, and the Brewers, you go out to Sacramento. God help anybody that has to play in Sacramento in September. That's terrible. And one of those is a getaway day, a Sunday afternoon outside game in Sacramento, California. Good luck. But it's going to be very interesting to watch how this plays out, because these Reds, buddy, I see a scenario where they go out and dominate those 2 series, and then you get the Athletics right after that. What do we think they're going to do? Right. Yeah. So I have stopped raising my hopes up to get knocked down, because I'm kind of tired of getting knocked down, but things are still aligned. This team continues to do what we ask of them. So I think you're right. I think they're going to go into that 6-game stretch with an opportunity to overtake and be the wild card holder.
Well, and I think there's another reason too that they need to win these next 3 games, because next week is going to be really big. And you mentioned you get knocked down, but as a wise man says, you also get back up again. Hunter Greene returns next week. As long as everything goes well tonight, he is making a rehab appearance in Louisville. He's going to throw around 80 pitches, and as long as he recovers well, and he has after every start to this point, as long as everything goes well recovery-wise, I think we'll see him next week, because I don't know that they're going to be conservative and say, okay, well, now we work you up to 100 pitches in your next start, and then we bring you back. But even if that's the case, the fact that he's pitching here on Friday, that's going to put him in the middle of the week. So we might see him at the latest Sunday or Monday next week. So not this coming Sunday or Monday, but the following Sunday or Monday. He's coming back. And if you get this team into a good spot and bring him back into the rotation, there are so many teams. And if you haven't checked out the squad show that we had today that just posted, honestly, it was a lot of fun. Had JD from Locked On Cardinals, Chuck from Locked On Brewers, both saying how scary the Reds look with the fact that they are where they are, and Hunter Greene hasn't been pitching for them. And he comes back, and Nick Lodolo comes back, and this rotation is just going to look ridiculous as it moves forward. And where they are in striking distance, adding that all up with the man known as Tito, because as Justin, who was also on our Locked On MLB squad show of Locked On Guardians, will tell you, there ain't nobody better in the business at coaching a team through the second half of the season than Terry Francona. And all of that coming together, like, there's absolutely no reason to quit this team right now, but they got to win the next 3 games.
So I wonder about this. I wonder, we've talked about the stealing. We've talked about the things. We've talked about, is it possible that Terry Francona is kind of like holding the leash, holding the reins, and just wants to like wait for the right time to just turn these guys loose and catch teams off guard and say that, basically create the fake tendencies and then let them go? Is that possible? Could he be rope-a-doping the entire league?
I mean, it could be, because Paul Skeens looked at first and he looked at second. Like, I remember specifically in the first inning, Matt McClain was on second and Ellie was on first. And Paul Skeens kind of did like a quick glance and noticed that the leads were fine. And so he would just pitch. And there was never a time where he would step off the rubber or even think about throwing over. And those are 2 of the fastest base stealers. I mean, McClain was ahead of Ellie, so Ellie wasn't going to lead the double steal. If they did it, it would be McClain in front. But I do wonder a little bit, because you're right. Like, you get into a playoff scenario, and the way that it stands, if the Reds get in as the very last wild card spot, I think that would put them up against the Phillies. And you got Zach Wheeler on the mound against you. We know what happens when Zach Wheeler pitches against the Reds. It didn't go so well last time. So maybe there is an element of, man, we're going to strategize the heck out of this, and they're not going to see what's coming when we get into that, win or go home mentality in the postseason. I do think there's this upper level understanding, and we as Reds fans can't see it because we as Reds fans are conditioned for the moment that the season collapses, and we're waiting for that moment that everybody can tell us that it's okay. You can ignore this team now and go pay attention to the Bengals. Terry Francona will not let you do that because Terry Francona is managing for today, but there's an upper level understanding in his mind that he's also managing for October.
And that is where we're going to wrap up today's show. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Reds. Thanks for making Locked On Reds your first listen every day, folks. Make sure you check out Tim Daniel after each and every Reds game live with the Reds postcast right here in the Locked On Reds feed. Also, go check out the Locked On MLB feed. Sully's over there. He has you covered for a national perspective for Major League Baseball and MLB Game Night in that channel as well. They are watching every single game with all of the experts from the Locked On Network so that you don't have to. All right, Jeff, we're going to keep gathering up the news, the notes, the reports, the rumors, the information. We're going to bring them right back here to keep everybody locked on Reds every single day.
Speaking of the Bengals, did you watch the preseason game?
I didn't because, for whatever reason, the NFL thinks we should pay for that or something.
Yeah. The good news was, well, everything looked exactly as you thought it should.
Great.